YouTube, what is up? What is up? What's going on? It's your boy Joseph Ausmus here with another installment of Ask a Realtor, episode 25, live streamed on YouTube. I'm going to take a moment to throw up the link here. And my apologies, this was supposed to air last night, Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. I'm not going to make excuses other than, here we are. Thursday night at 6 p.m. We're going to get it going on for you tonight. We're going to get back on the track next week with the Wednesdays at 6, but I at least wanted to honor my commitment to get it done for you this week, okay? So let me throw this link up here, and then we will get rocking and rolling with the live stream. And we got some great topics to talk about here tonight. All right. Quick post here. Cool. Beautiful. So how is everyone doing? What is going on tonight? I hope that you are having an excellent week. I've been staying real busy over here, and I've got some good stuff to talk to you about tonight. We're going to talk about post-closing occupancy, aka seller rent back. What happens when a seller stays in the home after closing? What does that look like? What can you do to protect yourself as a seller? What can you do to protect yourself as a buyer? So, yeah, definitely a good topic to discuss. This happens fairly commonly in a real estate transaction. So, we want to make sure that we get talking about that. But as always, you know the format. If you've seen this before, we keep it loosey goosey. If you want to throw in stories or questions pertaining to the topic or another real estate topic, we can go down that rabbit hole. So, all right, excellent. Shared online. Let's dive right in. So, with a post closing occupancy, how that works is the um, buyer, as of closing, becomes the new owner of the property. And the seller, they are typically going to need to get out of the property by closing. You know what? Excuse me for just a minute. Oh, I felt that coughing fit coming on. My goodness. You keeping me on my toes here, YouTube. That's okay. That's okay. Got to keep the voice going strong for the broadcast. Beautiful. So let's keep rocking and rolling here. So in a standard transaction, at closing, the buyer becomes the owner of the property, right? The seller receives their proceeds for selling said property, and the keys are handed off. So possession takes place at the time of closing and funding. But what we see commonly, especially when it pertains to the seller is selling their primary residence, is that they need that money from the sale of their home over here in order to close on their next home over here. So how are they going to pull that off if they need to sell here first? And there's a couple of different ways that folks do this. One, I have a video on my channel for you to check out called that pertains about a bridge loan, and essentially they are getting the money, accessing their equity in the home first, so they can go ahead and purchase that property, and then they go ahead and sell this one. So that's an option right there. If they don't want to do that, or if they're not eligible to do that, they have some other options here. They can sell that property, and then they can go ahead and rent place for a short term, move their stuff into storage, and then find their next home, buy that, close on that, move into that one. Uh, Not a sexy way to do it, but it's an option. And now, this third option that we want to talk about tonight is the seller rent back. So, post closing occupancy, and the seller is going to stay in that home and they are going to become the renter of that property. And the buyer that just closed on it becomes their landlord. And they can do this in the state of Colorado for up to a period of up to 60 days. At that point, then you know they would be required to move out, and the buyer can now take possession. They can now put their own renter in there, however they see fit to want to use that property. But we want to make sure that the parties are protected and that everything is very specifically laid out. And the state of Colorado, DORA, has state approved paperwork that we can utilize just for this purpose that really spells everything out. It almost acts as like a miniature lease. It is called the PCOA, the Post Closing Occupancy Agreement. So I want to briefly go over that with you, just so that you know, if you're in a situation like this where there's a possible rent back happening, you know what the options are and you know what it looks like and what to expect. Cool? Everyone with me? Right on. Cool. Let's dive in and check that out here. So pulling up a post-closing occupancy agreement real quick so that we can kind of go through. There we go. Awesome. So, it's very straightforward. This is entered into in between the parties relating to the occupancy of the residence, um, and it ties into the contract for that property. Buyer and seller entered into that certain contract to buy and sell real estate, date and such date, and any amendments to it. All the terms of the contract are incorporated herein by reference. And then it spells it out. Seller may retain possession of the property from date of closing through, and it gives you an opportunity to enter a specific calendar date there, not to exceed 60 days after closing. Provided, however, seller may cause an earlier termination upon 5 days written notice to buyer. So let's say the seller requests 30 days, buyer agrees to it, and the seller closes. They find their next property, they get out of there, and they can get the keys back to the buyer within 15 days. All they have to do is give them 5 days written notice that they are terminating this, rent back early. And they have every right to do that. They just have to give the 5-day notice, right? That comes more into play if there is a monetary consideration, if the buyer is charging them rent, which I'm going to discuss. In this market, we've been seeing very commonly that a buyer, in order to get their offer accepted by the seller, that they will rent back the home to them for a period of up to 60 days, rent free. And they do that to make their offer more attractive, because let's be honest, like, that's a monetary consideration. If the home would rent on the market for $2,000 a month, or let's say the mortgage is $2,000 a month, but the buyer can't move in for 2 months, then yeah, if they're giving them a 60-day rent back, and their mortgage is $2,000 a month, like, that's an extra $4,000 consideration that they're giving to that seller when they, at the time that they make their offer, they say, we offer this amount and we're going to let you stay there for 2 months absolutely free. You just pay utilities, which we're going to cover next. So there, but the other things that this covers would be maintenance. Um, if necessary, buyer will at buyer's sole expense maintain, repair, and replace certain systems within the home. Seller will maintain the property as seller previously maintained the property. Uh, and they'll provide timely notice to the buyer of any improvement requiring maintenance or repair. If there's any damage during this rent back period, seller will, at seller's sole expense, keep the improvements in any personal property. And if there is that damage, then the seller um, could be liable for that, right? Seller's responsible for any misuse, waste, or neglect. Um, Buyer access, buyer can give at least a 24-hour notice to get into the property. Let's say they needed to bring in contractors, get measurements. They have the right to do that. Um, Rent, they can spell out a certain amount that they're going to be renting it for during that term. It's payable to the buyer in advance at closing. And should the seller vacate before the end of the term, then will the unearned rent be prorated and refunded to the seller, or will it not? That is subject to negotiation. So you can specify if it will or will not right here in this agreement. So you can already see the agreement has a lot of language that's similar to a lease. Um, Water and sewer. Water and sewer charges incurred for use during the term will be paid by who? Seller or buyer. So they make a choice there. Electric and gas, same thing. Who's paying for it? Will the seller have to pay for and maintain the costs of a seller's renter's policy? I always recommend to both my buyers and sellers that the seller go ahead and do that. It's just good business, and in case that there was an issue that came up, um, having an insurance policy in place is very helpful. Very much peace of mind. Security deposit. Anytime that there is a rent back, I'm advising my buyers to go ahead and ask for a security deposit, even if they're not charging that seller rent. It's important to have that as security for if there are damages. Let's say the seller's moving out and they damage the property, scuff up a floor while they're moving furniture, something like that. They can recoup that out potentially out of the security deposit. Whereas if they didn't have one, then it's, you damaged this. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. And it becomes one of those situations. So, more protective of the buyer that's renting back their now property to go ahead and get that security deposit. And then sellers, when you give a security deposit, make sure that you're really documenting condition of the property at the beginning of that term, so at closing, as well as documenting the condition at move out. That way, if the buyer tries to claim some of your security deposit saying you damaged something and you know you didn't, then you have that documentation. Cool. So that's the long and short of the post-closing occupancy. Again, it's a really great tool that we have to allow a seller to sell a property that they live in and not have to move into a hotel and then move into another property when they can just stay right where they're at. There's the convenience for them, potential for a buyer to make some money off of the property for those first couple of months while they're helping the seller out if they decide to charge. Again, if it's a multiple offer situation and there's two offers and that are neck and neck, one of them is charging rent, the other one's not. Seller's probably going to lean towards the free rent. But again, with the type of market that we're in now, constantly shifting, and buyers have a little bit more choice in the matter, then we're actually starting to see rent backs come back where the buyer can feasibly charge that seller. So I hope this is really useful to you guys. Do you have any questions or anything for me? Leave them in the chat. If you're watching this after it's live, it's a recording that goes on my YouTube channel. So you can check out this and all the other videos there. I encourage you to subscribe because we are putting this on every week. Even if it's not Wednesday night, then I'm going to get to it at some point in the week and make sure that I deliver you that content. Thanks for checking it out. I'm Joseph, your host, and I will see you guys next week.